Let's just imagine for a second that your connection to God, your commitment to God, your walk of faith put you in a position where you needed to take a very public stand for a very unpopular position to a very unreceptive audience. Just put it that way. Let's say you wanted to stand for God, and that meant standing completely by yourself, surrounded by hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people who opposed everything that you loved, everything that you stand for, the very God that you worship. Let's say that government officials were in place who had power to take your life if necessary, and they were opposed to you also. And not only did you stand for the truth, but you had a remarkable and, in fact, completely unpredictable success among the people out there. The people who did not support you, the people who did not care one way or the other, who seemed to be just kind of there to fill out the picture, but turned out to be very supportive of what you've done, that you were obviously right, and they supported you wholeheartedly. And after this tremendous victory and this complete and total defeat, humiliation really, or worse, of those who were opposed to you, all it got you was a price on your head. The officials that were hopefully going to be won over by this tremendous effort, after all, politicians go with the crowd most of the time. Well, this one doesn't. This one's determined to stay the course, to hold on to this position that was completely untenable, completely ungodly, completely in violation of the evidence of your eyes, as it were. No, he's going to hold his previous course, and he's going to kill you if necessary to accomplish his purposes. Well, you might do what Elijah did in that very situation. After his showdown with the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, after Ahab saw not only the deliverance that Elijah was able to accomplish, the tremendous victory, the fire from heaven, but also the end to this amazing drought that had been the chastening of God, Elijah wins, and Ahab is determined to kill Elijah, Ahab and Jezebel alike. Verse number 1 of 1 Kings chapter 19 says, Ahab told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done, and now he had killed all the prophets with a sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, may the gods punish me and do so severely, if I don't make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Well, you'd probably do what Elijah did. We see in verse number 3 that Elijah became afraid and immediately ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba that belonged to Judah, he left his servant there, but he went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die. He said, I have had enough. Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. I've had enough. I'm done. I did not sign on for this. This is not what I had anticipated. This is not the deliverance that the child of God is promised over and over again in the text. This is too much. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I would really rather die than live another day of this humiliation, this fear, this panic, this completely unacceptable situation. Well, I would like to think that from a distanced perspective, like we are right now looking at Elijah, passing judgment on Elijah, we would be able to say it's not really our place to tell God how much is too much. God knows better than we do. God knows what we need. God knows what we are capable of, what we're tolerating, what we can tolerate. Paul tells us, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, that we're not going to be given such temptation, but is common to man. He will provide the way of escape. There is release. There is comfort. There is ultimately victory in our walk with Christ, but it sure doesn't feel that way sometimes. And it doesn't feel like it's going to be that way. It feels like quitting is a much more reasonable option in these times. And what I want to do is take some inspiration from Elijah here and the comfort, if you want to call it comfort, that God gives. One might just as easily call it a kick in the pants as it is comfort, although I suppose you could say that it's both. and hopefully take some lessons for ourselves, because I doubt that you and I have ever been through what Elijah went through, or what Peter went through, or what Paul went through, or what any number of other worthies of the Old Testament and New Testament have gone through. But we're not comparing resumes here. Your faith walk is yours and my faith walk is mine, and we have challenges. And there are times when we want to quit. What I want to do is look at issues like frustration, for instance, and fear that accompany our walk of faith, and remind ourselves that Elijah survived. Elijah persevered. Elijah is considered one of the great heroes of the Old Testament, and we also can persevere. Frustration, this beating our head against the wall for no particular reason, and worse than that, this confidence that people who matter, people who have a word on the subject, who have a say in the affairs of human beings, including this here human being, they may want to cause us harm, or worse than harm. We need to be reminded sometimes that this is what we're called to. Now, maybe you're not called to be a prophet in the same sense that Elijah was, but we're called to be Christians. We're called to be lights in the world, a world that is not conducive, really, to the walk of Christ. We remember what Jesus tells us, for instance, in Matthew chapter 10 and verse number 28, about this commitment that we're making to him. We see here, don't fear those who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. Rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Now, you may not think that is a very encouraging passage, and maybe I don't either. All they can do is kill you. After all, what do you worry about Ahab for? All he can do is kill you. Well, that's kind of my point, God. He can kill me. Well, but that's all that he can do. Well, sometimes it feels like that's all there is. But of course, we realize in our saner moments, in our moments of calm and reflection, that this world is not our home, that we are citizens of heaven, and that spiritual realms are where we truly reside and where we will reside eternally. That's what really matters. And putting our hopes and expectations on some kind of physical in-time deliverance is missing the point. It very well may be awful. It may be terrible that the things that are called upon for us to walk through, the things that we were required to walk through, to endure, etc. Like it was for Elijah, like it was for so many others. Some actually did give their lives, and maybe you and I will one of these days. But it comes with the territory. It is what being a Christian is all about. It's what being a person of faith in a faithless world is all about. Do we have enough faith? Do we have enough confidence that God can see us through these moments? Hopefully, we'll be like Elijah and find that confidence, find that assurance. It may take a little bit. It may take some searching for us to get to that place, especially if we feel like we're just the only one in the room, right? That's what Elijah thinks here. In verse number 10, after God speaks to him, asking what's going on, like God doesn't know already, he replied in verse number 10, I've been very zealous for the Lord God of armies, but the Israelites have abandoned your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed their prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are looking for me to take my life. Well, that's not true in the first place. Elijah was not alone. He felt like he was alone, though, didn't he? And we do too sometimes. The bottom line is you're not alone, and you never have been alone. Sometimes it feels that way, but you're not. Paul writes in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse number 16 and 17, after talking about the various abandonments that he's had to suffer for one reason or another, he calls out for Timothy to come and join him in short order, to bring Mark with him. He says Luke is with me, so he's not completely alone already. He reflects back in verse number 16 and 17 on a time when he was by himself. I don't know if that's literally true or not. Luke was with him through most of those times. Maybe he means everybody but Luke. We have a tendency to leave out all the information that defeats our argument that we're trying to make in the moment sometimes, and maybe Paul's doing the same kind of thing there. But he does remember the most important part, regardless of how much he may be or may not be exaggerating. He says here, the Lord was with me. So even if he was completely and totally abandoned, and occasionally Paul was standing by himself, literally standing by himself, but Jesus is there with us at all times. This recalls a story that involved Peter, or Paul rather, known as Saul of Tarsus at the time, the end of Acts chapter 7, when Stephen is by himself and people like Saul are trying to take his life, are taking his life. But Jesus is with him, standing at the right hand of God, and Stephen is given a vision into heaven to acknowledge that that is the case. The record preserves that for us. Exactly how Luke found out about this, we don't know. Maybe just direct inspiration and that's it. Maybe Saul of Tarsus, later on the Apostle Paul, maybe Paul told him this story. Maybe Paul saw Jesus too. Who knows? Either, in any case, Stephen is encouraged in this moment because Jesus is with him. Paul is encouraged in his darker moments because Jesus is with him. Now, we don't get to see Jesus in the same way that Paul did once or twice, or that Stephen did, but we know he's here with us, that he is taking residence among the people of God, that we are his body. He is, by the very nature of things, with us at all times in spiritual ways. And that should be good enough for us, especially since we're not really alone anyway, are we? God goes on to remind Elijah that there are 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee to Baal, and such is the case today, too. There are people who may or may not be in the room, may or may not be in the particular trial that we're going through, but they're there. They are with us, if only in spirit, and that should be enough for us. Even if that were not the case, and all that we had with us was Jesus, that should be enough for us. What an incredible encouragement that should be, that we are never really alone in these struggles. Obviously, it feels that way sometimes. It feels like we're alone, but we're not. The suffering that we endure, or called upon to endure, and it's kind of, I don't know, it seems almost disrespectful to talk about the suffering that we have to go through in this life compared to people like Elijah or Paul or any number of other worthies of the Bible that literally gave their lives and endured so much more hardship and difficulty than you and I ever are going to. We read in the book of Revelation about 7 churches that are struggling, churches in the district of Asia, including the church there in Smyrna, that was undergoing affliction and poverty, the text says, although as far as Jesus is concerned, they're rich, in verse number 9. Verse number 10 says, do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. Look, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you, and you'll experience affliction for 10 days. Be faithful to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Now, that may not be precisely what the Smyrnans were hoping for. And in fact, I'm quite sure it wasn't. Your problems are over. The worst is past. It's all going to be good from here on in. That's what we want to hear, and that's what we don't hear. We instead hear oftentimes the opposite of that. Yes, it's bad. It's going to get worse. You will suffer this persecution, and your job is stick it out until you die. Well, I'd rather stick it out until it's over and then have a nice, calm, peaceful, tranquil retirement here on earth. Well, that's fine, and maybe that'll be the case. Maybe you'll be able to enjoy that, but maybe not. And in fact, why are we really even hoping for that? Because tranquility seems to imply an absence of conflict, an absence of trouble. Well, that means an absence of enemies, an absence of spiritual warfare. And we're called upon to engage the enemy at all times. If God gives us another day of life, we should spend that day fighting in his army. That's not necessarily what we want to do or want to hear. But if we truly love the Lord, if we are truly committed to his cause, we embrace this opportunity, including whatever kind of suffering, whatever hardship, whatever difficulty may come along with that. I would love to tell you that your problems are over and that good times are on the way here, or too sweet, but that's not necessarily the case. In fact, it probably isn't the case. The good news that we have is that whatever faces us, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever pain and suffering, whatever loneliness, Jesus is going to equip us to handle it. Peter writes at the end of his first epistle, chapter 5 and verse number 10, the God of all grace who called you to his eternal glory in Christ will himself restore, establish, strengthen, and support you after you have suffered a little while. To him be dominion forever, amen, going through verse 11 there. We'd love to leave off that suffering a little while thing there, but that's not the way it works. The point is you're going to struggle, you're going to have hardships, difficulties, challenges for a little while. And it may seem like a very, very long while. But whatever it is, however long, however short, Jesus will supply you with the strength that you need. You can and you will, with his help, survive this. You can succeed. Now, if you're like Peter, it may be a rocky road, a very rocky road on your way to spiritual success. It may feel like failure left and right. It may be, after a fashion, failure left and right. But Peter found the strength ultimately, oftentimes because of the suffering, because of the failure, because of his resilience and his willingness to come back and serve and serve and serve again. Maybe that's where you are. Maybe that is the struggle that you're facing. Maybe you're on the verge of quitting. Maybe you've already quit, or thinking about it at the very least. Don't do that. Trust in the Lord. Allow him to give you the strength that you need through prayer, through worship, through Bible study, through good association, surrounding yourself with Christians who are like-minded and who are suffering the same kind of things that you are, to one degree or another. And yet they're finding a way. Maybe they need your help as much as you need their help. Maybe we should be not forsaking the assembly. First, in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, encouraging one another, and all the more as we see the day drawing near. That's our opportunity. That is our challenge as Christians, to draw near to God, to draw near to our brethren, to draw near to the example of Jesus Christ. And in this case, the example of Elijah, who was by no means perfect, but he was able to redouble his efforts. He was able to recommit himself. He was able to find that strength, not necessarily in the great wind or the great fire or the great earthquake, but in this small, still voice, this subtle reminder that is available to us at all times. I'm with you. I am here with you. I love you. I support you. I am securing your future. If you will only believe, if you'll continue to confess me, I will continue to confess you. That should be a tremendous encouragement for us in our times of difficulty, our times of struggle, our times of near collapse, as was the case with Elijah. It can be the case for us as well. I hope that this is an encouragement to you. I hope that you can draw closer to God. I hope that you can do it without quite the extremes of emotion and despair that Elijah goes through. But however it works out, finding Jesus in your life, finding Jesus and the strength that he provides, the future that he provides, the hope that he provides, if you will keep the faith. Thank you for following along. Continue to study, and God bless.